after a very late night. I wanted to ask you about some comments today made by OMB Director Russell Vought. He says he expects another rescissions package to be sent to Congress. And also in comments today to reporters, he said he believes the process needs to be less bipartisan. Lisa Murkowski, one of your colleagues, Republican from Alaska, said she was offended by that during an Appropriations Committee meeting just a few minutes ago. As someone who's been involved in the budget process for a long time, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Russell Vought is a tyrant. He should not be in the job. He is someone who basically said in his Project 2025 writings that he wants to traumatize the federal workforce and make them feel so bad about their job that they quit. And the awful thing is he's been relatively successful. We've seen senior federal employees leave at a record rate, and now we've seen, again, driven by Vought, this effort to have mass firings, Department of Education, Department of State. The whole notion, and one of the reasons why I was for keeping the filibuster, is that you need to get 60 votes to pass a budget. That means both political parties need to participate. And Vought, sanctioned by Donald Trump, his willingness to arbitrarily pick and choose which programs he wants to fund. Nobody voted for Russell Vought. And the idea that he wants to make this a totally partisan process is awful for any kind of notion that we could get back to any norms. Why go through the whole process of forming a bipartisan budget if then this bureaucrat who's got, frankly, no real background other than hating federal employees and hating the federal government, to allow him to arbitrarily pick and choose programs after a bipartisan deal is reached. Congress has the power of the purse. If this guy is allowed to continue to have his way, the only way we can stop it is if more Republican senators join Lisa Murkowski and say they will step up and stand up against this kind of arbitrary tyrant.
Senator, our next question is Bridget Kelly with WSBT.
Hi there. Thank you so much for doing this. So today's the last day there are LGBTQ youth-specific services with the National Suicide Hotline. Tens of millions of dollars kept that program up and running. What are your thoughts on the Trump administration's decision to eliminate those services to use those dollars elsewhere?
I think it is cruel. I think it's heartless. We've spent years in a bipartisan fashion trying to get a National Suicide Hotline prevention, I believe 988, and it saved lives. I've sat with the folks who are on the other end of those calls. Heartbreaking stories, but without that suicide prevention hotline, particularly young people, the rates of suicide will go up dramatically. We all know that young people are under enormous mental health strains these days, particularly people who lived through COVID, who are kind of consumed by social media. And now as we see some of these AI agents basically replace real friendships with AI-related agents, the idea that you would take the literally pennies that are spent out of the federal budget to fund these national suicide hotline lines, it's wrong, it's cruel, it will lead to additional deaths. And again, you don't wish ill on anyone, but God forbid when families wonder or people who would rely on this kind of service find that it's not there. There's one guy, Donald Trump, along with a bunch of Republicans who have privately again said it's bad to get rid of this, who went along, that destroyed that service.
Senator, our next question is Sophia Bangura with CBS 19.
Hi, Senator Warner. Thank you so much for taking my question. So UVA Health just had another high-profile resignation, and this is coming after, the resignation of President Ryan. And then we also saw earlier this year Burt Ellis getting kind of pushed off from the Board of Visitors. What are you making of all of these resignations? And, are you fearing for leadership at UVA? And what do you think are the implications when it comes to people's trust in UVA's institution and the healthcare delivery there?
Well, in terms of the healthcare resignation, I'm not familiar with all the background. I do know this, that Jim Ryan was pushed out for political reasons. The university was threatened with additional budget cuts and cutting researchers. That's wrong. I thought this crowd was supposed to say they didn't want federal bureaucrats interfering. We have great universities in Virginia. They are well governed by boards of visitors that are appointed by the governor. And all of the members of the current board are appointees of a Republican governor. And the fact that you've got bureaucrats in Washington overriding that leadership and pushing President Ryan out, I think it undermines our world-class universities. There's now some indication they may be coming after President Greg Washington at George Mason University. Senator Kaine and I are pushing back against that. I wish the governor and the General Assembly would also raise their voices. We don't need federal bureaucrats for political reasons trying to destroy Virginia universities. And if we don't stop it, I'm afraid university after university will be subject to this arbitrary, politically motivated, basically threats that threatens federal funding unless you, again, bend the knee to this administration. It's wrong. It needs to stop. And we need to see and hear more from Richmond on this subject.
Senator, our final question is Amy Knowles with the Virginia Dogwood.
Hey, Senator Warner, thanks for taking our questions. I know that in the past you've helped to secure federal funding for training behavioral health professionals in Virginia. Last year, you visited Loudoun to support the development of a mental health center there, and you've been an advocate for mental health for kids with social media protections. But looking ahead, what additional steps would you like to see Congress take to recruit and train these mental health providers, particularly in rural or underserved areas where access continues to be a challenge?
We need more people in the pipeline. To have the skills to be counselors. One of the things that is a real challenge, if you go through all of your schooling and then you still have to get, I believe, 100 hours of additional counseling, if you don't work at a place like the VA, you got to pay out of pocket to have that counselor supervise you. So how we get some additional assistance, not only for people to get the education, but then get the experience to become qualified counselors is terribly important. I'm afraid with the awful big bill, I've heard from many rural communities, rural hospitals, that even if they don't close, one of the first places they'll have to cut is mental health. I think that would be awful. I do think it's important. One thing I do want to commend the governor and the General Assembly on, I think limiting cell phone use during the school day makes a great deal of sense. And I still think, Congress needs to step in with some boundaries on these social media sites. Unfortunately, we've gone the other way, and then you see people like Elon Musk allowing, whether it's racist or mean-spirited, he's taken away virtually any of the content moderation. And it's, again, one of the reasons why I think we need to put some guardrails on artificial intelligence. If you think social media has really helped screw up our kids, wait till you see AI on steroids and the mental health damage it will do to our children. We need more mental health professionals, but we actually need some of the leaders in the tech community to be more responsible as they develop these new technologies. They all have a great upside, but there are some darn scary downsides on these tools as well.
Senator, we got one late breaking question from Michael Martz with the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Michael? All right, Senator, that was our final question.
Okay, thanks everybody. Be safe.